What's up, guys? Welcome back to Kobayashi Island. This is episode 8, where we're going to be focusing most of our attention on the networks in the downtown area, as well as sort of like a government island, which if you see what I'm doing now, I'm on Google Maps looking at Chiyoda City, which is where the Japanese Imperial Palace is, the government building in Japan. And I wanted to sort of take a look at this and do something similar to this because I thought this was so cool how they have their government buildings on sort of like a moated island where there's like a moat around the buildings, and it kind of has gardens, and it also has this really interesting like freeway going through the island. It has like a tunnel. It's a very unique, interesting place. So I wanted to kind of do a take on that. Obviously, because of what's in the Steam Workshop, I couldn't find identical buildings or even necessarily Japanese buildings. I think what you're looking at here is a Korean temple pack, which is sort of the best I could find. But I think it works relatively well for what ended up happening here. I mean, it's not completely authentic and exactly what is in Japan, but I think broad strokes, it's pretty similar. So right now I'm kind of planning out where this government building is going to sit and where the moat is going to go and how it's going to connect up to the rest of the city. So right now I'm building the drawbridge kind of deal. It's not exactly a drawbridge, but the more like formal entrance. And then later on I'm going to do like kind of more like a practical entrance to the government buildings. I do something really that I really like here in a second with this walkway down from the train station, because in Chiyoda City, that's one of the other things that I really like about it, is that there's this sort of pathway that leads straight from the main train station down to the little island, and it's like a straight shot, and I wanted to do some, a take on that as well. So I do this cool little technique where I use the arches that I just used to make the bridge, but kind of create more of like a formal looking retaining wall. You're about to see me do it here. I think this turned out pretty cool. And then so once I kind of laid down the buildings and the general layout of the sort of government island there, a lot of what the rest of this episode is focused on is kind of building out the road networks and the train networks in order to facilitate the downtown and deal with the fact that the center of the downtown here is taken up by this area. So, it's kind of a challenge to figure out how the roads are going to snake around and through this island, being that it's blocking up, a huge area. When I say downtown, I don't mean that this is going to be the area where all the big skyscrapers are and stuff. I'm sort of imagining that the downtown is quite large, and there's more of like a financial district where there's much larger skyscrapers, and then there's more of like a traditional downtown where these government buildings are, where the main train station is, where some larger buildings are, but where it's a little bit more low rise and whatnot. This obviously isn't going to be skyscraper central over here. This is going to be kind of more like very dense, but still relatively low rise buildings compared to the financial district. Right now you see me working on this custom interchange here. It's a little bit more of a double freeway exit than it is an interchange, but I kind of built it like an interchange. I think this is going to be one of the more used off and on ramps because it's going to have an exit that leads through the government island area, and then another exit that goes up north towards this big open area that I haven't 100% figured out what I'm going to do with, but I'm thinking it's just going to be some sort of like urban sprawl up there, kind of similar to the center of the peninsula that we dealt with a couple episodes ago. Kind of terraforming the land here, adding some land, removing some land. I wanted this river to be a little thinner so that I could have some more space in the downtown area, and then I kind of added like a sort of peninsula in one area that I'm thinking is going to be maybe similar to the park that I put in. Another kind of point that's sort of saved and turned into a park. So something interesting I did here, we'll see how well it turns out once I really finish it, because I just sort of placed down the bare minimum of this train station. this episode, just to kind of get the placement of it and make sure that the idea kind of worked, was I built a train station that I don't have any underground train station assets, but I lowered one of my regular train stations to pretty deep and have it come out of a tunnel, and then the train station is sunken. What I'm going to do with that is connect it up to the other train stations there, kind of make it like a dual platform train station where one of the platforms is much lower underground and the other platform is at ground level, and see how that kind of works out. That will be probably the next episode or two where I come back to that. I mean, a lot of the stuff this episode is just sort of placing down things that I know I have to come back to, because it's all inevitably going to change once buildings come in. You know, if there's a big building and I know I want to put it down, a lot of times that means that the roads are going to have to move, or the train station is going to have to be in a slightly different position, or there's a million and a half things that can cause some of this network stuff to change later on. But I felt that it was kind of needed to get a general sort of layout of what's going to happen in this downtown area, where the roads are going to go, where the train lines are going to go, in order to have sort of an informed mindset of where I can and can't place buildings. Like, for instance, if I hadn't built that island and decided on doing it later, I would probably have to tear down a huge portion of the city, and in reality I probably would have decided against doing that and would have built it somewhere else in a less central area, which would have looked worse. So I think it's just a key part of the process when you're sort of building like a downtown, to spend a good amount of time on the network and the layout of it before you really get into any detail in one specific part of the downtown. I wanted this whole playthrough to be relatively varying in elevation, have a lot of higher areas and lower areas, and play with heights a lot. So you'll see me a lot of times deliberately making hills and putting things underground or way above ground to kind of make that elevation change, which obviously is a challenge. When I was first starting to play this game, I would do the exact opposite. No matter where I was, I would just flatten the terrain in order to make it nice and easy. But I think the elevation change really makes like an interesting looking city that you can't really achieve if you're making it everything flat. It allows you to have smaller buildings up high that you can still see in the skyline, and it makes a much more busy looking skyline, I think, having elevation changes. So that's definitely a goal for this playthrough. Right now you see me making another freeway on-ramp and off-ramp. This one I wanted to put here sort of near the train station, because the other on-ramps and off-ramps kind of dump you out on the other side of the train station. So I realized that there wasn't really anything, any freeway entrances over here, and it kind of needed one. I mean, I'm not trying to go crazy and have the city completely reliant on the freeways. I don't want too many entrances and exits, but having them evenly distributed I think is pretty important. So we've gotten out of the building the network part of this episode, and we're starting to detail up the government island part of the city. One of the things that I really like about this space is it allows for a bunch of greenery to be downtown. I make a big garden and leave a lot of area kind of untouched, which I think looks really nice and will look especially nice when there's buildings everywhere else. Right now I'm kind of making the more functional entrance to the government building, where cars would come in and drop off people, sort of like a roundabout to get you back onto the main road. I'm imagining this is where you drive in rather than across that little rickety bridge that I made at the beginning. I feel like that's more for like in the olden days, you know, they would use that, but now we have cars, so we use the side entrance. And something that it seems like they kind of have in Chiyoda City is like a main entrance and then a more functional side entrance. You can see me referencing it over and over on Google Maps. I was just looking at the main entrance area, how it's like a big tiled entryway that's like hundreds of feet wide and hundreds of feet long and huge and very formal looking, and has hedges on either side. So I wanted to do a nice copy of that. Obviously, I'm trying to take elements from the Chiyoda City, and I can't really copy it one for one, but I wanted to have this sort of similar feel. So I'm kind of doing the best that I can to take inspiration from Google Maps, but then doing what I feel like is gonna work best in this particular area. So right now I'm kind of starting to build out a garden where I might need to come back and add sort of like a reason for people to come over here, because I didn't put any actual park assets here that would make someone want to walk into this area, which would be really nice to see some citizens walking around this park. But I do think it ended up looking pretty cool. I did an interesting trick with these retaining walls where I used the retaining walls and the ploppable grass to sort of make like a circle-shaped pond. And then I wasn't happy with the way that there's still like a slope on the inside of the circle where there's like kind of a shoreline in there, and I wanted it to be all water. So what I did was, if you raise up the ground so that there's nothing at water level, you see me do it right there, and then place down a road and then use move it to lower the road won't give warnings that it's underwater, because for some reason it thinks that since you raised the ground and you placed it on raised ground, that it's not an issue in terms of having water on it. So that's like a good trick for getting roads underwater without having constant warnings, is to sort of raise the ground up above sea level, place the road, and then use move it to bring it back down. I end up using that trick a lot to kind of get the sea floor lower in areas where there's buildings or roads nearby, to kind of sink the water level down and take away a sloping shoreline and kind of give like a cliff face, which is especially useful when you're using retaining walls and stuff. So right now I'm kind of finishing out this island area, building the more open area on the hill and the freeway entrance. I'm generally pretty happy with how this turned out. I think it's a good foundation for downtown, having this big grassy area in the center of the city, and having like a big park and a garden and whatnot. I think it's going to be a really interesting, cool looking addition to downtown. The next episode, we're going to move into filling out with buildings some of the downtown area. I think this downtown is going to take quite a few episodes to get to a place where we can really move on from it, beyond the network that I laid down today. I think this was a good foundation for quite a few episodes to come. So look forward to placing down some buildings next episode.